Listen to me, you beautiful apes. If you are looking for a place to rest your weary, bag-holding hands, your diamond hands, this is the right place. My channel talks a lot about personal finance, investments, as well as, from a data scientist perspective, all of the ways to become rich in a few steps and a few months. However, the main thing that we want to cover today is the saga of GME, and a lot of you have asked really great questions and comments in the video I just posted about how a hedge fund can pretend like they've covered their shorts, thus driving the price of the stock down and then being able to fulfill their self-fulfilling prophecy. You see, once the price gets to a certain point, they will close out their shorts and then we will never get to the moon. That's why I want to provide exactly the information that you need, as well as hoping you smash that like button for someone else to find this video, as well as watching all the way into the end, because I know that you can hodl until then. As mentioned in that TradeSmith Daily article, which I covered in the last video, the first way is retail investors do not hold the line and panic sell, therefore they drive the price further down, releasing into the market more of the float and enabling shorts to cover buyback shares at progressively lower levels. So, quoting the TradeSmith Daily, plummeting short interest along with a plummeting GME share price, in other words, could indicate that the Reddit army is heading for the hills and the longs was selling early, giving the shorts a means to cover as the longs got out. Important to note that if the long holders of GME shares did not break ranks and sell en masse, it would have been impossible for the share price to fall and hedge fund short interest to fall at the same time. Because without a critical mass of long side holders selling into the market, the hedge funds covering their shorts would have nobody to buy from, as they brought back their short positions. Remember the very first videos I talked about how a dog waiting for his treat is like a person waiting for the short seller to give them back the share that they borrowed. And the interest, the millions of dollars of interest that these hedge funds have to pay, is a ticking time bomb, especially since there is now information about when this deadline is fastly approaching. So we talked about that scenario where you apes decided not to hodl and you decided to take your paper hands and leave with a loss. However, this other scenario where this can occur is the hedge fund short interest in GME didn't actually dissipate, but instead they played a trick to make it seem like it did, demoralizing the retail side and then breaking the squeeze. To now quote verbatim from TradeSmith Daily, the way the hedge funds could have done this made it appear as if they covered their shorts, even when they really didn't, involves trickery in the options market. On the SEC website, they even covered exactly how to manipulate the market and told them exactly not to do it. It's kind of like saying, here's how to make a bomb, definitely don't make this. But they outlined this all the way back in 2013, August. But last time I read out these bullet points because I thought it was already a lot to cover, but this time I'm going to make it broken down into the simplest elements. So first step, if short sellers are facing a squeeze because shares are hard to buy or scrutiny for holding an illegal short position, remember, over shorting a stock over and over and over, selling it to a dog and then borrowing it immediately and then selling it again, even though that stock still belongs to poor old Meatball sleeping in the corner, that is eventually going to be illegal, if not immediately illegal as you overshort it. This is something that they could do. Hedge funds could appear like they've closed their short position through the deceptive options trade. A hedge fund that is short a stock can write call options on a stock, meaning that they are now short the call options, having sold the call options to someone else, usually a market maker, and simultaneously buy shares against the call option. Broken down into its simplest pieces, this step is essentially what a hedge fund does. It's hedging its bet between two different directly contrasting in this case, bets. They are trying to short a call option, same thing as shorting an actual long or an actual position of a regular stock, and now they are buying shares against the call option. So it's like turning the light on and turning it back off and saying, I've saved a lot of electricity, haven't I, by turning off all of these light switches. This works because if a market maker buys options from the options writer, the market maker has legal privileges to do a version of naked shorting as part of their hedging function. So this is necessary under the current rules and current system for market makers to protect themselves when facilitating options trades. So this is just a loophole. This is just literally a loophole that is being exploited by hedge funds. And why do you think that even if you have doubt that this is exactly how they are manipulating the market, just imagine a Pareto optimal solution. Just imagine something that is perfectly reasonable in a reasonable world. Why wouldn't they take advantage of this loophole? Like, this is just existing out there. As of 2013, the government has already put out a policy that says this is exactly how you exploit a short that you don't want to hold, or you think that there's too much public scrutiny on an illegal short. Yeah, you are manipulating the amount of shorts that people think you have in the market. It's the same as saying, look, I have so much electricity bills that I owe, but look how often I'm flipping down the light switch. The gist is that hedge funds can use tricks to make it appear like they've covered their shorts even if they haven't truly covered, and can't for lack of available float, by way of exploiting loopholes that exist due to an interplay of reporting rule delays, market maker naked shorting exceptions, and legal practices of synthetic share creation, new longs and shorts made from thin air relating to market making. In short, no pun intended, sorry, do not come at me in the comments below, please don't. These tricks help hedge funds maintain short positions that, legally speaking, they weren't supposed to have because the shares were never properly located, which triggers alarm bells when we consider the extraordinarily high amount of FTIDs and fail to deliver shares. You can look at wherearetheshares.com to fully get a better picture, and I'll include that link down below. And Michael Blurry's now deleted tweet viewable here about how when he called back shares he lent out, brokers took weeks to actually find them, with the implication that they could not be located. It's an overshorted stock. There are shares that are owed to meatballs around the world that don't exist. These factors lend credence to the idea that the shorts weren't actually covered, but were given the impression of being covered with trickery using options in order to cover short positions that they shouldn't have had to begin with because the shares were not properly located, as we've said. Separately, but potentially related, released updated short numbers last Sunday, reducing their projection of short interest from 122% to 113% a day later on Friday to 55% on Sunday, while markets were closed. Therefore, in this Redditor's estimation, using the same data set that calculated 113%, which many found to be suspicious. Rightfully so. Later, it was found that this new number was calculated using the same data set that yielded 122% short interest percentage, with the significant difference of adding synthetic long shares into the short float equation, which is against standard practice. It seems like the number changed when you changed the denominator and the numerator. For a more calculated breakdown, a user here pasted a good analysis of how those numbers were achieved. The real short percent according to S3's data is 122%. However, their 55% figure is technically not a lie, extremely misleading, because the hedge funds have flipping that light switch back and forth and increasing the numerator and the denominator. The best way to understand this is like a batting average. Let's assume that out of every 100 tries, I end up missing like 95% of the time. Well, in order to make my batting average seem better, I could just throw a ball in the air and hit it, and then throw a ball in the air and hit it, and then throw a ball in the air and hit it. If I increase both the numerator and the denominator, I have artificially increased that percentage. That batting average is going to be through the roof, even though I haven't actually increased anything. The best way to understand this is that, let's say that you are a small pizzeria and you give out a lot of pizzas that have rats on them, a disturbing amount of rats on pizzas. Well, how do I increase the percentage of non-rat pizzas? Well, I could just deliver the pizza to myself over and over, or to my friends, and they can deliver pizzas back and forth. Therefore, I increase the amount of successful pizza delivered on the numerator as well as total number of pizzas delivered on the denominator. By increasing both, I have artificially made my pizzeria seem like I don't always give rats on my pizzas. Here's some math from the Redditor. S3 head is redefining share float to include shares that don't exist in order to be able to say shorted percent of float is lower. It reduces the traditional SI percent float. Instead of shares shorted float, our calculation is now shares shorted divided by float plus shares shorted. So by this definition, if a stock is shorted 400% of existing shares, total banana count borrowed, and resold 4x, then total shares is 100. Short percent is calculated like this: 400 shares divided by 100 plus 400 longs that were shares that were borrowed, 0.8. That is the normal way we define short percent. Would say it's 400% shorted. In S3's way, it's 80%. Knowing this formula, we can work back to what S3 would have said the short percent of float was using the normal definition of short percent of float. 55% short of float means for all existing shares plus shorts, or on the other side of the trade, longs whose shares were borrowed away to short, is 55-45, as much as existing shares. Meaning, proportion of shares short by the normal definition is 55 divided by 45. 1.22. Many have pointed out that this could be manipulation on S3's part as well. It's interesting to note that as late as January 29th, Eeyore from S3 stated most GME shorts have not covered and net share shorted hasn't moved at all. Initially on the 28th, he claimed short interest float to be 122, and then the next day he claimed the short interest to be 113. 2 days later, on Sunday, S3 related a report on the calculated short to be 55, which was confusing to many as this was a large discrepancy like we just covered. This is a revolution that I want to be a part of. I'm glad you're a part of as well. And if you check out any of the links below that help me support my channel, especially my Patreon, which is direct support, investing in Andrew Coin as we call it, and otherwise, at the very least, I really appreciate you staying all the way to the end, giving this video a like, subscribing, and hitting that notification bell to not miss out on any of this juicy news, on this juicy moon rocket news. And for now, but not for forever, thank you guys. Peace.